Veterans in Transition is sponsored by HireVeteransFirst.com, Jelani Consulting, and Village Connector Community.
Welcome to Veterans in Transition, where we promote the veteran community. Each week we travel around the region highlighting veteran-related news, issues, and events. In this episode of Veterans in Transition, a former paratrooper turned businessman shares his story, Spartan Technology CEO talks about his formula for success, and correspondent Angel Livett sat down with the first woman executive director of the American Legion. But first, he retired as a colonel in the United States Army, and at the age of 50, he was still jumping out of planes as a paratrooper. And he shares the birthday with the United States Army. Correspondent Weedham Abdul has this story.
Tell us about your ranks in the Army.
I was commissioned in 1981 as a second lieutenant and the first one for Virginia State in military intelligence. And so as a lieutenant, then I went out to Fort Huachuca for my officer basic training in military intelligence. And then once completed that training, I went to Fort Bragg for my first tour of Fort Bragg. The first of 4 tours ended up being at Fort Bragg. But prior to that, while as an ROTC cadet, I went to airborne school. Unbeknownst to my mother, after she found out, she was not happy at all, finding out I was falling out of planes. But it was something I wanted to do, and so I became a paratrooper. And so that was one of the reasons I went to Fort Bragg, because that is the home of the paratrooper. Later on, I finished my career actually at Fort Bragg as the Corps G2 as a full colonel.
Talk a little about the White House.
I got a call. I was a major at the time at Fort Bragg. Wanted to stay 1 or 2 more years at Fort Bragg, and I got a call from my assignment officer telling me that I was nominated for a position in the White House. And I told them they must be mistaken. You don't have the right person. And the assignment officer said, no, we haven't made a mistake. Your name has been nominated for a position, so you need to come to Washington, D.C. to interview for the position. Well, I said, if I don't get the position, can I stay at Fort Bragg? They said, we don't think that's going to happen. We think you're going to get the position. So I come to Washington, D.C. Of course, my family was here, and so they were excited to see me. I told them I was here for a short visit on an interview. And so I go to the White House interview, competing against some of the top officers from all the services, Navy, Air Force, Marine, Coast Guard, and I was selected to serve on the White House staff as a program manager, and enjoyed that. And I was there for 2 years, earning what we refer to as a Presidential Service Badge, which basically is awarded to any service member that has served faithfully on the White House staff.
So tell us a little bit about the JBB group.
Well, when I retired in 2012, I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. I had several offers from some major firms, and I didn't want to work for another big bureaucracy. I wanted to do something on my own. And so I thought about it and spoke with my family about it, and I started my own company, now referred to as the JBB Group. And originally I was focused on being a federal contractor, but an associate of mine asked me, was I interested in possibly pursuing some international work? And so as a result of that, I became an international broker. So I'm a certified international broker through the State Department. And so now I'm able to represent American companies when dealing with international countries, normally through the Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Interior, and so I've pursued that now through the JBB Group.
How does your military background inform the way you conduct your business?
Because of my background in different foreign countries, I feel very comfortable in different settings. In the White House, you mentioned the White House assignment earlier. You know, we threw the term around when we were on the White House staff. It's got to be presidential. Well, what do you mean by presidential? It means it has to be well rehearsed. It means it has to be thoroughly planned. It means it has to be thoroughly executed. And so those things, all those traits, I've brought to my business.
In transitioning from military service to entrepreneurship, what has surprised you the most?
what has surprised me is how prepared I was. And all I had to do was apply the things I learned in my military and the things, of course, my parents taught me, but also what I was taught in the military. Just believe in the confidence in yourself. The military instills confidence in you. So just fall back on your confidence. Fall back on the skills that have trained you in. You could still apply those same skill sets as an entrepreneur.
At the Washington, D.C. Veterans Affairs Medical Center, we have a commitment to caring for all veterans, including those who are homeless, at risk for homelessness, those who served peacetime, and those who served combat, including those who are wounded or not. We invite you to get social with us on social media at Facebook at Washington, D.C. VAMC, on Twitter at DCVAMC, or visit our website, www.washingtondc.va.gov.
Commitment, sacrifice, being disciplined to your own success. President and CEO of Spartan Business Technologies shares his story in his own words.
I grew up in a military family, and so discipline was always a part of life. Being a teenager, you kind of become free-spirited, and going into the military helped pull some of that in. My experience in basic training definitely, where they just kind of break you down and then build you back up, it taught me discipline, focus, purpose, and taking on missions and taking on jobs and working all the way through to accomplish what you set out to do. Not to quit, not to give up, not to change your plans just because things aren't working out exactly like you want them to, but to see the job all the way through. And so that kind of embedded itself in me through my entire professional life. And I owe that to my experience in the military, particularly the United States Air Force. I had a very interesting transition when I left the military. I was here in Washington, D.C., working at the Pentagon, concluded my professional military career, made the decision that I was ready to leave active duty, but I didn't want to have the feel of retiring. So I literally did not go through a formal retirement ceremony because I didn't see myself, quote, retiring. I was just transitioning to a new life and to a new existence. And I spent a lot of sleepless nights wondering what that experience was going to be like. But when I got to KPMG, I met a group of former military officers who took me under their wing and started showing me the ropes about what the new life would be like working in corporate America, and taught me all the ins and outs, the do's and don'ts, that really helped me make a very smooth, seamless, successful transition. And that's very important. I would tell all veterans, as you transition, the first thing you do is look for someone from the brotherhood, sisterhood that were formerly on active duty, and have them work with you, mentor you in the new life. The culture is different, the way you do business is different, the way you react to things is different, and you have to go through that experience. After I retired from the Air Force, I started working at KPMG LLP, which was a professional services firm located, well, it's a global firm, but I was in the Washington, D.C. office. And at KPMG, this is where my entrepreneurship came out. I was working in a partner group that supported the Department of Defense and also supported District of Columbia in the federal space as well as the district. And what we did there was to provide services in the area of IT, financial management, and logistics, those type of support services to various organizations. We provided trained staff. I moved from that organization, or KPMG, to PricewaterhouseCoopers after about 2 years. And I was in the Global Risk Management Solutions group, providing similar services, business advisory services. I started my business in 2007, but I had made the decision some time before when I was still in the partnership at KPMG. It was something that just inside of me, I said, I'd like to try to do this on my own. I had actually been very successful. I had made it to the partnership at KPMG, went to the top of that, the pinnacle of that. I was in charge of the Air Force and the Army business accounts, delivering services to, advisory services to those two particular organizations. And at the end of 2007, I decided I wanted to attempt to build something from scratch, from a sheet of bond paper to as large as I could possibly make the company. And that was what sparked me to go out on my own and to begin putting together a plan, which I took a couple years to do, to build this company that's now known as Spartan Business and Technology. In the professional services world, I knew that we could provide business process reengineering, which is what we do, business process improvement. We can do organizational change. We provide trained staff methodologies and processes and policy packages of services to our clients. And those are primarily the things that we do, and we do it across the enterprise. The fact that I have been a part of large organizations such as partnerships at KPMG and director at PwC, it gave me a unique insight as to how we could approach the market as a small business. So we've always treated ourselves as a large business, just tiny, and that we're growing up from that small size to a much larger company. Keys to the success is staying focused, keeping life simple in terms of what the employees have to do with the company, keeping our delivery straightforward, doing what we say we're going to do, under promise, over deliver. The military experience gave me the confidence to know that as long as I applied my training, skills, focus, as long as I was fearless in approaching the marketplace, as long as I prepared myself appropriately, there was very little chance that I would fail at anything I took on. We give back, Spartan and myself, give back through various programs. We sponsored one of the elementary schools here over the last year, training young ladies, giving them an opportunity exposure to new and different experiences than what they were receiving in the local community. My advice to others, other veterans that are seeking to be a part of the business community when they leave the military, my advice to them is to know what you're passionate about and go and do the things and do the business that are built around your passion, number one. Number two, know that you want to be a CEO or a consultant, because those are two different things, and it's very important to understand the difference. And if you have not prepared yourself with a business degree, you have to go back and get it. You have to have training in that area. Running a company and doing what you're passionate about are two very different things. But when you marry them together to create a company, the most important thing you'll do, if you're CEO, is run and manage that company while your passion is executed by your staff.
She's the first woman and first African American to hold the executive director's position at the American Legion, one of America's oldest veteran advocacy organizations. Correspondent Angel Livers sat down with Verna Jones.
You've been in your role as the first female executive director of the American Legion. What would you say has been your most memorable achievement thus far?
Yeah, there's so many things. This is such a great opportunity to be able to have, to be able to serve in this capacity. You know, there are a lot of things that veterans need, and it gives people who normally wouldn't be considered for particular positions definitely hope to say, you know, if I work hard, I can do this too. So there have been times when I've been out traveling and there have been young women who will come up and say, you know, I'm a junior in college, or I've just graduated and I've been following you, and it just, you know, gives me hope and confidence to know that I can do the same thing. So those things are very memorable.
How do you think the trajectory and the American Legion have shifted since your presence?
We were founded in 1919, and things were very different. And, you know, although, you know, men of all colors, all races, fought in the same war, when they came back, the American Legion had different posts. There were posts where predominantly African Americans went to, you know, share their stories and have that comradeship, and then posts that were considered the white post. And so, for over the years, it's just always been, you know, a white male in this position. I think now it just raises the awareness that the face of the military is changing and the face of veterans are changing. And so being the organization that we are, we have to change with it. And you know, most people have been very receptive. It's all about having the passion and the heart to take care of veterans. And you know, our 2.2 million members, they look for that. And I think they are now, you know, saying it doesn't matter what that person looks like. It's that the person has the head and the heart to take care of our veterans, and that's what's important.
Now, for the people who may not know the role and responsibilities of the American Legion.
So the American Legion is the nation's largest wartime veterans service organization, founded in 1919 under the 4 principles or pillars of taking care of our veterans, mentoring our youth, promoting patriotism and pride, and promoting a strong national defense. And so we do that by our divisions. We have the Legislative Division here in Washington, D.C., our Veteran Affairs and Rehabilitation Division, Veterans Employment and Education, and National Security. We go out and make sure that veterans get their health care that they deserve, make sure they receive the disability compensation. We have over 3,000 accredited and trained professional representatives across the country to do that. We liaison directly with the President, with DOD, with Congress, with the VA, and all other community partners and those who have an interest in veterans.
Can you speak to me a little bit about the choice cards? Are those still in effect? Are they working?
The Choice Act was set up to be a temporary program. Veterans who were more than 40 miles from the nearest VA facility or who could not be seen within 30 days at their VA, they had the option to go out and find a facility. Now, for that temporary time and for what it was needed for, Choice was a great program. But the VA also has a program, fee basis, which they were doing the same thing. If they could not accommodate the veteran, they would buy the veteran purchase care, which was our fee basis program. Veterans are still going to be taken care of under that VA healthcare system, because if they're not able to be seen by the VA, if they can't provide those services, or it's not advantageous for the veteran to drive to their local facility, the VA will still purchase care and take care of veterans.
You transitioned from your military life about 11 years ago.
That's right.
Can you tell me a little bit about what that experience was like for you?
I think that, especially at that time, the TAPS program and the transition program wasn't as strong as it is right now. I just, you know, I was getting out of the military and I thought, there's so many opportunities and it won't be that big of a transition. I'm going to be living in the same area. I'll just go from one job, you know, just get out and find something different. But it was a big transition. I didn't take advantage of the TAPS program. Back then, you know, they didn't make you go. It wasn't mandatory. It just signed the paperwork and I was looking at the clock ready to get out of there. And what I found after being so excited a couple of weeks, you know, have nothing to do, I don't have to put on a uniform, nobody tells me what to do, was that there was a whole big world out there, and I had spent the last 8 years of my life knowing exactly what I was going to wear to work, knowing exactly what time I was going to be there, being told what to do all the time, and the transition was a little bit bigger than I thought. So I, you know, I looked for jobs, and really with my background, I worked finance in the military personnel, and I thought it'll be so easy for me to get a job. I hadn't properly taken advantage of the resources in the military, and so my resume didn't look like a civilian resume. So I kind of had to start all over again and just work that from the outside without the resources that I would have been privy to still being in the military.
Did you have any major hardships throughout that transitional period?
Well, when I got out, I got married to someone who was in the military, so it was still kind of attached to the military. Had been a long-term relationship, and it didn't quite work out. He had been deployed and had some issues, and I found myself in an abusive situation. And going through that and not having, you know, family in that particular area, because I stayed in where I transitioned, and my family was in North Carolina. I found myself being, you know, I was alone and not really having anyone to talk to or really have that support group that I needed. So I ended up transferring. I found a job at the Department of Labor and worked there for a little bit and transitioned to get out of that personal situation I was in. And I found myself homeless. I was lived in my car for about 17 days. And, people talk about chronic homelessness, but I'll tell you from experience, one day without somewhere to live is a hardship. And, for me, fortunately, I didn't have children, and it was just me to take care of. But, it was a lot to deal with, not knowing who to talk to or where to go and how to really manage that situation. But I will tell you that my military background, knowing that anything is possible to overcome, and from my spiritual upbringing, knowing to pray and to just find every kind of all the strength I had inside of me to just get past it. To say, you know what, you've been in tougher situations than this. Pray about it and get through it, and I did.
Now, with that being said, I know the VA has a initiative to end homelessness for veterans over the course of the next 5 years. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
I think any program that's set up to help segments of veterans that need help, like homeless veterans and veterans with PTSD, or those at-risk groups. But I will tell you that to end homelessness and to put a time period on it, 5 years, I think is an overstatement of what really can be happened. You'd have to end, mental illness, domestic violence, drug and alcohol abuse, balance the budget. How can you do all of that in 5 years? Now, I think that we can lower the homelessness rate, and I think that the VA has done a great job at doing that. But when you look at numbers and you talk about functional zero, having been in that situation even if only for 17 days, there's nothing functional about not having a home to go to. And then you couple that with veterans who have families. Imagine a mother who has a baby, has her children. She knows that if she goes to the VA and says that I'm homeless, and if they don't have anywhere for her, the first initial thing is they're probably going to try to take her children away. What mother would do that? So instead, huddles up with her children at night in an abandoned building or her home or from place to place on someone's sofa, wherever she can go. And I think that we have to find a way to make sure that you can keep the family intact, because that's truly what's important. It's just imagine a man who can't provide for his family, who wants to go out and find a job, and you don't know where your family's going to be. They're somewhere where they're not warm, or they're, it's very hot, or they don't have food. So I think that we have to take a holistic approach to taking care of the entire family, the entire veteran, and everything that goes along with him or her.
What would you say would be some great resources for women transitioning out of the military? What would be your words of encouragement to them?
The first thing I'll say is be honest with yourself. Everybody has a story. And if you've gone through some of the things that, as I mentioned earlier, that I've gone through, be willing to tell your story. But at your time, it's your story. But the story that you tell and the things that you've gone through really could help someone else. And it provides, at least for me, healing. The more I tell my story, the more I'm aware that there are other women or other service members who go through this. And one of the worst things is to feel alone, like no one understands, nobody else has been through this. So, take advantage of all the resources that the military has to offer. Before you get out, there's a wonderful TAP program. There's the Soldier for Life, Marine for Life programs, if you're in one of those branches of the military. Reach out to those resources and make sure that you just have a support group. Talk to your family, talk to people who you're close to. And most of all, love and respect yourself and understand that only goodness and greatness is meant for you, and we all have the ability and the power to do that.
Hi, my name is True Lester Pauling. I'm with Prince George County Commissioner for Veterans. I'm here at the Prince George County Veterans Stand Down 2017. Thank you so much, veterans and military families, for your services. We appreciate you and we support you.
And that's all for this edition of Veterans in Transition. We ask that you like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. If you have a story idea, reach out to us at vetsintransition.com. And remember, we all have a story to tell. Until next time.